Welcome to Influence, the show about one of Mississippi State University's founding colleges, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. I'm your host, Emily Shaw. Today we'll be talking about world hunger, and our first guest is Dr. Scott Willard, the Associate Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Welcome, Dr. Willard.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Great. So this month we'll be hosting the World Youth Prize Mississippi Youth Institute, and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the World Food Prize, it's essentially a global organization, although it's based in Iowa. It's with the World Food Prize Foundation. It was founded on the premises of Dr. Norman Borlaug, who is the father of the Green Revolution. And so his legacy is that of fighting world hunger, dealing with global issues of poverty. He was able to bring countries like India, some countries in Africa, back from hunger situations that would have just decimated their populations. And one of his, I guess you'd say, lasting foundations was that we need to engage the youth and engage youth in agriculture. And so when they established the World Food Prize, which is essentially the Nobel Prize for agriculture, along with that came this premise that we would also have these youth institutes. And so it started in Iowa, with Iowa, the state of Iowa, having a youth institute affiliated with the World Food Prize, and then started to grow to other states. And what this involves is those states, usually a state land-grant school like Mississippi State University, engaging the youth in 9th through 12th grade in their high schools on topics related to agriculture, world hunger, global food security, insecurities, and all the issues that surround that. And so it's a way for us to sort of reach out to our teachers in the state, to our students in the state, communicate about agriculture, about issues associated with global food security, and then bring them to our campus where we can then immerse them in opportunities for careers that they might want to pursue in those fields.
That's excellent. So this group of high school teachers and students that will be attending, what kind of activities will they participate in?
So one of the keys that sort of opens the door to the World Food Prize for students, at least for our state youth institutes, is they have to write an essay. And so they work with their teachers throughout the school year on writing this essay and talking about issues related to global food insecurity and world hunger.
Right.
And then they submit those essays to us. And we read those essays, and then we invite the students and their teachers or mentors, they might be 4-H agents, extension agents, even their parents, to come to campus, and we do a little immersion with them where they will present their essay to a group of stakeholders. So we have people from industry, from the campus, who will listen to those students talk about their country, about the factors that influence food insecurity in those countries, global, hunger situations, how to improve it. And we ask them to come up with ideas. And so it's a way to engage those students and listen to those students of how they would combat world hunger or hunger in that country. And then we usually have a speaker that comes that is dealing with issues globally to engage the students. And then we take them on tours around campus where they can learn about sort of the hunger heroes that we have here on campus in our faculty and our staff, in our undergraduates and graduate student population that are working in research and outreach on issues of how we can combat world hunger.
Give us an example of what kind of tour these students will take this year.
So this year they'll be going to our entomology and plant pathology program. They'll be looking at how insects are in some countries used in food even. They'll be looking at crop protection, of how we protect our crops and our livestock against insect pests, for example. And so they'll do that. Then they'll move over to our food science, nutrition, health promotion program. They'll be looking at our dairy plant. We'll be talking about food safety and how we produce fluid milk and ice cream and cheese, but also deal with issues related to food safety. And then they'll be talking about health disparities, about how things like diabetes and cardiovascular relate in a population to agriculture and how we can solve that through nutrition and education and outreach.
Well, great. So we know this is the first year. How do you think that after this inaugural year things will grow? How will they change?
Well, we hope to expand. I mean, the goal is that we will eventually touch every high school in the state of Mississippi in terms of being able to engage them with some of our materials associated with not only world hunger, but also issues locally in our
Right, yeah.
communities, in our state, nationally, as well as thinking from a global perspective. And then what we hope to do is that have students that will, and teachers that will engage this process and come to campus, because it opens the door for those students to scholarships. There are international internships through the World Food Prize that if they don't engage this program, they don't have access to. And we want our students here in Mississippi to have that same access to international internships, to USDA internships that other students in other states that have a World Food Prize Youth Institute also have. And so the expansion of that program to other high schools is really our goal, so that we can have every corner of the state come to Mississippi State and learn and talk about these critical issues to our security.
Thank you for sharing all that with us today, and we'll be right back with our next guest.
Imagine archaeological discoveries that affirm historical beliefs. We are at Mississippi State University, where we ring true.
Welcome back. Our next guest is Naomi Taylor, a senior in the Department of Agricultural Economics here in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Welcome, Naomi.
Hi, glad to be here.
So glad to have you here to tell us about your internship with FAO. Will you tell us how and why you got that internship?
So FAO is the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is a branch of the United Nations.
Okay.
And honestly, I applied for a few internships before that during my freshman year, so 2014,
Okay.
and I didn't get those. But then I got an email from the Ag Econ department saying they needed students to apply for an internship with FAO in Malawi. And I was like, well, where is Malawi? And so I looked it up. I was Africa, okay. I was like, there's probably no chance I'll get it because I'm a freshman.
Okay.
But with the encouragement of my professor, Dr. Randy Little, and my parents, I applied and I got it. And 2 weeks after finals, I was on a plane to Malawi.
Wow, and how long were you there that summer?
I was there for 3 months.
Wow, that is an extremely long internship, especially for someone who just finished their freshman year.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What all did you do while you were there?
So I flew in and we drove 2 hours north of the capital, Lilongwe, and I was stationed at the Kasungu office. And so I was assigned to research an irrigation project that FAO had introduced to smallholder farmers in 2 of the districts in Malawi.
Okay.
They introduced it after there was a drought that really impacted the food security of their nation. And so they were trying to introduce these new irrigation practices to the farmers so they could produce during the rainy season when there was less rain than expected and during the drought season. So while I was there, I had to make my own surveys, and I made one for irrigation farmers as well as non-irrigation farmers, so I had some data to compare. And then I visited the irrigation farmers. Total, I visited 14 villages, did 14 interviews. It was a couple hours of driving down some dirt roads and going past a lot of different farms. And it was really interesting to see the differences between the farmers that irrigated and the farmers that didn't. You could see the difference in the health of the children, in the amenities they were able to afford, like mattresses, more food, pots and pans, and cooking oil. And so that really impacted, my perspective on things, on what I should be grateful for, and what other people are struggling with. And so I compiled all the data that I collected. I did, the interviews were with a whole group of farmers. So instead of just interviewing one farmer, I had a kind of like focus group session and had them all answer my questions. And so at the end, I compiled that, made a report and a presentation that I presented to both the offices.
Excellent. So tell us about how that internship with water management and drought aligns with your major in environmental economics and management.
So as a freshman, I didn't really step into the world of my major yet. And so it was kind of like I'm working backwards. So now I'm applying kind of what I learned in Malawi in my classes. So when we're talking about international development issues, I can say like, oh yeah, I experienced that, and give examples to the class, which is really cool. And the professors are always asking me for input, and it's kind of a fun way to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did that experience, it sounds like it shaped your academic career, but how also did it shape your future career as you're about to graduate?
Right, so first it gave me a lot more confidence, and now I feel like I can pursue whatever I want, because originally I thought if anything I'd be working for the Environmental Protection Agency or something more along the environmental lines, but you find out that everything is interrelated, and so now that experience has me wanting to work in international development and with food security. So I've had the opportunity to present my research at the Universities Fighting World Hunger Summit that they have annually. And I've also had an internship with the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service.
Okay.
And so after I graduate, I will be working for them. And that's really exciting.
Do you know yet where you will be based?
In Washington, D.C.
Okay, well that's excellent. So tell us some more about the actual villages, some of the management of using the water management practices. How did they do that?
Right, so what was really interesting is that they formed these irrigation clubs.
Okay.
So if there was an equipment that they used, like a water pump, they would share it between different villages that are in the area. And most interestingly, they were mostly women. And so they had treadle pumps, which are you stand on the pump and you pedal with your feet, kind of like a bike.
Okay.
And then somebody else needs to be at the end to use a hose. And if the women were operating it, sometimes it would take 3 women because you need one person on each thing because they're not as strong as the men. And then the men would normally supervise the markets and things like that, so when they take the food to market. But I mean, there's issues beyond irrigation. There's where their water is coming from. What if it doesn't refill when there's no rainwater to refill that pool? And there's how do they get to the market, because the markets can be forever away, kilometers, and if it's raining, sometimes the roads will flood and they can't get there, and a lot of times they're only once a week, so their food will go bad before the markets even arrive. But despite that, it's amazing how happy and lively the village people are. When I would come, a couple different villages did a song and dance saying how thankful they were for FAO and for us visiting them, and then a couple different villages gifted me with a live chicken at the end, which is a big deal because they don't have, you know, a lot of food. So that just shows you how much they appreciate the knowledge that FAO and other organizations like that can bring to them.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and thank you for joining us on Influence today as we talked about how our college is working to combat world hunger. See you next time on Influence.